Hello everyone. In this video we're going to talk about the legendary Fujifilm X-E1. And if you stay all the way to the end, I have a secret to reveal regarding this specific camera. What many people don't know about Fujifilm is that they used to have a secret chamber under Mount Fuji. And in this chamber they have their arsenal of magic unicorns. What Fujifilm did with this camera, especially with the original X-trans sensor, was to sprinkle some of that magic unicorn powder over it. You might wonder, what is that unicorn powder? Well, it's their poop. You dry it and you sprinkle that magic poop over the sensor. If you find that a little bit weird, just remember, if we can drink coffee that's being processed through a bat's digestive system, we can certainly use cameras enhanced with unicorn powder. Before we dive into the amazing features of the Fujifilm X-E1, we have to state the obvious here. This camera was launched back in 2012, so it's really old, and you're definitely going to notice when you're using it. So it's a bit of a compromise to work with this camera. First off, the autofocus in the camera is contrast based, and it's definitely not up to modern standards. It's kind of good enough. It does the job, especially in single AF. If you have enough of light, it works. But once it gets a little bit dark, it starts to struggle, though it still gets the job done. When it comes to continuous AF, you can completely skip that feature altogether. It has the old continuous autofocus system where it's always focusing, not just when you half press the trigger. So, not the greatest. Moving on, if you want to use the exposure compensation dial on the top, you need to have the camera set on automatic shutter speed or aperture. It doesn't work with only auto ISO, but that's not the biggest trade-off. When it comes to the speed of this camera, it's a little bit slow. For example, if you're shooting with manual lenses and want to punch in for focus, you can't do that while the camera is writing to the memory card and the buffer isn't the quickest. So yeah, it's an old camera with compromises. Modern features like Wi-Fi and smartphone connectivity doesn't exist on this camera, and the customizability is very limited. Well, it's limited to 2 buttons. And there's a funny feature, a macro button, that in my experience does absolutely nothing with any of the lenses that I've tried on this camera. So it seems like it's a totally useless button. But let's forget about all that. It doesn't really matter because this camera has this magic property of the unicorn powder. What that means is that it's able to produce amazing colors. Yeah, we heard that one before. And previously I also made a big comparison where I compared all 5 X-trans sensors. Link will be in the description for that video. I was excluding the stack one also, against each other. And while the difference is very small, there is one sensor that stands out. This one. It could be because the sensor only has 12-bit color processing, so it has fewer colors. But what it does with those fewer colors is magical. Another question I often get when I'm reviewing gear is whether I would use this piece of kit on a professional job where I'm getting paid. The answer regarding the X-E1 and all other cameras with this sensor is yes. Maybe with a small exception for the X-M1, which I haven't tried, so I can't say for sure. A fun fact, when I had the X Pro 1 previously, I was on a job and I had my main camera, which back then was an X Pro 3. I also had a X Pro 1 with me to do some behind the scenes shot and things like that. I had a different lens on the old X Pro 1 and I ended up using both cameras for the job due to the practicality of having 2 different lenses and don't need to swap. And I can tell you that unicorn powder did an amazing job. I've said before that I kind of prefer the X-Trans 5 more, but that's only because of the nostalgic negative film simulation that I really like. Now I'm starting to get a little tired of that simulation, and I'm using ICC profiles from R&I, really nice images. And they play so well with this camera and all the other cameras I tried, so maybe the original X-Trans sensor takes back the throne for producing the best Fujifilm colors. I've used this camera for quite a while and I just like it. It's small, it's neat, and it's made in Japan piece of kit, which is reflected in the build quality. It has more or less everything you want in a camera. Even if it lacks some customizable function, you don't really need to customize much on a Fujifilm camera, especially not on one like this that doesn't have many functions. When it comes to buttons, you have all the buttons you need. Play, drive, different exposure modes, metering modes, AF buttons, and those 2 customizable buttons that you could set for ISO or anything else. I have ISO and focus points adjustment set to those custom buttons. Besides that, the Q menu more or less covers everything you need. You have physical dials and even a pop-up flash, so you're pretty well covered. So, is this camera worth picking up in modern day times in 2024 or even in 2034? The answer is yes, it absolutely is. And regarding those colors, one thing I've noticed is that the blue tones, especially in the sky, which is a combination of cyan and blue, on modern cameras they tend to have a tint of magenta. Even if you look at the sky with your own eyes, it's not completely blue. It leans a little bit towards the magenta, and what the X-Trans 1 sensor does exceptionally well is to remove that magenta tint, which renders colors that feels nice. That's the word I have. It just feels nice. And it's the same for every other color. Colors are sometimes a little muted, sometimes they're strong. It's hard to put your finger on it. You kind of have to experience it. This comes down to that magic powder, which have magical properties. It's something you can't really put your finger on. You have to experience it. The magic they achieved with this camera and with this sensor, it's not just hype. It's something else. This is where we stop. This is the review. It's an old camera that produces amazing images and amazing colors, if you know how to use it, so to speak, or if you generally know how to use a camera. Because no camera, regarding of what people say on internet, is going to make amazing images if you, as a photographer, don't know how to make those images. Makes sense, kind of. So, if you feel like it, or if you get the opportunity, try this camera. It's a nice camera and the user experience is nice. It's nice to slow down a bit, and it's nice to experience older gear and try it out and work around those limitations. Considering the price for these cameras that ranges from $200 to sometimes $400 US, what you get is a lot. Now it's time to reveal that secret. It lies under this patch here. It says X-E2. Yeah, I already moved on, sold the X-E1, but the X-E2 looks the same from the front and also from the back. It just has a larger screen. There was a vote where you wanted to see a review of this camera before the X-E1. That didn't happen, sorry for that. I blame the post office and the delivering companies, but this is the next camera that I will be reviewing. If you have specific questions or anything regarding this, feel free to ask them. Until next time, keep making amazing images. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful day.